All right, so the recording has started. So I'll welcome us again, officially again, to today's class. So for this class, we are going to be focusing on introduction to programming and Python, as well as Fast API. Right, just the basic of what these things do and how we'll be using them in the coming days. Because definitely we'll be using all these things, so that once we start using all these grammars, it doesn't sound new, right? So it's something that we should be familiar with. Okay, moving forward. So this basically the outline. Okay, so like I said, we may not actually go all the way to the end, being that it's basic, right? I'm told that it should just be on the surface, right, and nothing too complicated, right? So having that in mind, let's discuss exactly what I think. Is someone trying to say something? I think someone's mic is on. Okay. All right. So, for the purpose of explanation, I will create a new slide where we could just be jotting down some points. Okay, because most of the things that I'll be saying will be coming straight from my head. Okay. Okay. So most of the things I'll be saying the details of them may likely not be on this slide. So for the purpose of jotting down some information, I will just include a new slide in this slide, and that slide will basically be used for jotting down things. All right, so we could see, I'll just put in a new slide here with content. Just need something with content, right? So we switch to that. Okay, so we will use this and we'll just be writing here for the purpose of jotting down. Please, this slide I will mostly delete it out after this class, but for the purpose of understanding and jotting down certain information. Okay, so for today's class, we're gonna start like this, right? So, given the fact that we all signed up for backend, so I will assume that we start from what exactly will be our role, all right, all the way to how Python comes into the picture, right? I think that makes sense that way. Okay, so we start from the fact that we understood that we are coming for backend. So let us understand what we'll be doing
Okay,
there.
you said you're going to upload the video.
Yes, definitely. This video would be uploaded. Yes. All right. So well, we are gonna start from backend. Okay, what we'll be doing as backend engineers, right? What framework we'll be using and how Python comes into the picture, right? So we're gonna start from there all the way to Python, okay? So having that in mind, what exactly is backend, or what do you think we'll be doing in backend development? Okay, so in simple terms, right? In simple terms, backend is basically a part of a website. Okay, it's mostly tied to websites, right? But it doesn't mean that it doesn't also exist in other software development areas like app development, right? There's also backend in app development. Okay, but for this one, I'll just assume that we are specifically be dealing with what we website and app development. Okay, so backend, right, is basically that part of the website or application that users don't see. All right. So I just put that down as a note. Okay. So BE specify backend, right, is basically that part of a website users can't, right, can see. So it's either the website or application or app rather. Okay, so we'll include app there as well. So that's basically backend, and it's basically that part of the website that users don't see. So and what do they do? Okay, what happens in that part that user does not see? So basically, what happens in that part that user doesn't see is storing of data for. Right. So take for instance, we've used some platforms like Facebook, right, or TikTok or any other platform that requires what authentication. So we have situations where we have to sign up. For someone is writing on my screen, please hold on, hold on. Please do not annotate. Please do not annotate. Please, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Please. Okay. So like I was saying, okay, if we use some applications like a social media application or any application at all that require us to do what to insert data, right? Now, most of the time we have one beautiful interface, and that is the part that we see, right? Uh, we may see places where we have to put in our username and email and password and the rest of those things. Now, those what we are seeing there is basically what we consider as front end, which is not our field, right? So some group of individuals came up with that wonderful design, and we do what and we see them. But then what we don't see is that when we type in this information in these fields and then we submit them, right? That information doesn't just disappear. It doesn't just go into a thin air and just get lost. You get it gets saved somewhere. That information traveled from one point to another point, and it's one of the reasons why if we go back to that application and then we log in and then we insert that information, the system still remembers that information. It's because that behind the scene some back-end engineers have done what have collected that data and have communicated with database and then and have saved that data. So that is what is happening behind the scene, and that is where we fall in. Right? That is where we the back-end engineers, that is where we do what we fit in. So apart from just storing data, we also process requests. Okay, we also process request because what happens is that now once this data is being submitted, right, there's a certain kind of request that is being made, but don't worry about it. We will, as we proceed, we talk about this request, right? There's a kind of request that is being made, and that kind of request is specific to what to storing this information. So our job too is also to make sure that we process that request and do the necessary the necessary task that is meant to be not done. Okay. Another thing is what is connecting to database, right? So, like I also said, right? Like I also said, um, we do what we get this data. We do what we communicate with database, and then we do what we store them. So database, of course, we also talk about it because that is also our duty, right? It is our job to do what to know how to communicate with database and save this information. So that data that when you submit, it doesn't just go into thin air. It lives in databases, right? It lives in databases, which of course, as we move forward, we also do what talk about database in details. Okay, and also making sure, finally, okay, making sure making sure everything works behind the scene. Okay, everything works behind the scene, right? Behind the scenes. All right. So there are certain behind the scene logic that we do or that we always do what right. It's an example of them is the login logic, right? So we don't want to authenticate users if their credentials is not correct. We don't also want to log in mm, we don't also want to log in users and end up doing what showing data that belongs to another user. We don't also want a situation um, where a user comments on a post and the comment is nowhere to be found. We don't also want a situation where we like a post and our like is also nowhere to be found. Now, all those things are logic behind the scene, and it's also our job, our duty to do what to make sure that all those things works perfectly. Do we understand? Do we understand? Do we have question? Do we have question so far? All right, so the silence means there is no question that we are following up. All right, so now having the knowledge of what of backend, now how do we then communicate with what with external bodies, right? How do we now communicate with the front end engineers or with the mobile developers, right? Now we've known our job, right? Now it's now how do we do what? Send this information to end users. End users in the sense the front end guys or the application builders or whoever what intends to do what to communicate with our back end logic. So we do that using a concept called API, right? A concept of API. So I'm not sure whether I'm not sure, right? If all of us, right, have heard or know what an API is, but if you do not know, there's absolutely no problem. It's my job. I will of course tell us what it is. So API, it's more like a social relate. I'm trying to make this to get out of this, so it stays alone. Okay, so give me a second. Let's see. All right. So API it's an acronym, right? It's an acronym that stands for application. It's an acronym that stands for application programming interface, right? That's what it stands for. And what does it do? It's like a messenger, right? That's basically what it does. It's like a messenger, a messenger. That, that's what API does. It's like a messenger that allows the front end guys, the front end or mobile application guys, mobile application or any other people, any programmer or end user rather, or any end user, technique end user to do what? To communicate with our back end. That's basically what it does. Any end user, press this end user. I want to be specific. Any technical end user, because of course you don't expect any users to start communicating with backend, right? That user must have understood how API works and then have some technicality in doing what in communicating with backend, right? So we don't expect anyone to jump on our backend code and start communicating. It doesn't really work that way, right? But then we know that front end and back end guys, of course, they're technical enough, right, to know how to communicate with back end. So, but then if there's any other technical end user, then of course they can as well communicate with our back end logic. So, API now comes in our what as an interface, as a messenger, where it allows the front end guys to do what? To communicate with back end guys. Right. So now let's assume that we have a backend, right? Let's assume that we have a backend a back-end logic to a back-end logic that basically filter, or let's say a back-end logic that provides all users in our database, right? This could be a typical example of our back-end logic, right? Now, API now comes in and be like, okay, fine, I've seen this logic, right? So now, if any front-end guys or any back-end guys, sorry, if any front-end guys or any mobile guy want to do what, communicate with this particular logic, they simply do what, send it via what, API. API be like, okay, fine, I've heard your request. What it takes this request, come to what, to our back-end logic, do what, submit that request, and we the back-end guy do what, we process this request, and at the end of it, or we do what, we send back all the users, and of course the API do what, takes it again and send it back to what, the front end guy. That's basically what API does, right? So it's an application program interface, and it have a standard. Yes, and this API have a standard format, right? This API has a standard format. It must follow the JSON standard, right? All APIs must follow JSON what standard. Which don't worry yourself much about what JSON standard is. We will talk about it sometime in the future, right? But just know that there's a standard called JSON standard that every API must follow. So it means that if a front end guy is sending in this request, they send it as a JSON standard, and then if a server is returning this response, that response must be in a JSON standard as well. That way, there is a free flow of communication. Are we following? Do you understand? Do we have questions? Question. 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 All right. So I'll assume that the silence means no question. We are all following. All right. So now having known this, all right, having known what backend is and how the front end guys intend to communicate with backend engineers, which is what through the API, right? Now the big problem is how do we build this API? Because that's basically our role. Our role is what is to build this messenger that do what that communicates with the front end guys. All right, so I think someone has a question. Someone hand is up. Someone hand is up. All right, so please please unmute you and ask your question. Julius.
Quickly, I want to ask this JSON standard.
Okay.
Can you just tell us what it means and the role in
Okay.
backend?
All right. All right. Fine. Fantastic. I'll talk about that. All right. So Julius, I think your hand is still up. You have a question? Julius, we cannot hear you. All right. So I think we've lost Mr. or Mrs. Julius there. I think we've lost Julius. We've lost Julius. All right. So let me answer the previous question that and the question that we just heard from Miss Juliet. Okay. So the purpose of JSON in backend is that in the world of programming, right? There are several tools in which we can do what work with in backend. There are several programming language which we can work with in backend, right? And this programming language have offer their own tools in doing what in building in building or writing the what this backend logic. Now each of these languages are separate; they are different. Okay, it's similar to our own languages, right? Assuming Miss Juliet that asked the question speaks French, and and she doesn't understand English, right? And I speak English, and I don't also understand French, and then probably Miss Juliet also has her own back-end logic written in what in French, and I also have my own back-end logic written in what English. Now, JSON standard comes in because it says that it's a law, right? A standard law that says that all programming language must process this particular standard. So it means that in Miss Juliet's backend, her own language has the capacity of understanding JSON standard or JSON format. My own language also has the capacity of understanding my own format. So that way, if I intend to communicate with her own backend, there is absolutely no problem because whatever is coming whatever is coming from her ends, right, is coming as what as a JSON standard, being what a general recognized standard across all programming languages, and that is its role. Its role is to make sure that that information that's coming in is what is understandable to your own programming language, right? And it works with API because APIs is meant to do what to communicate with backends regardless of any languages, right? So since it's communicating with backend, it means that it can only communicate with a general understandable standard, being what the JSON format. Do you understand?
Understand. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so Ms. Julie says that if you could explain the last point on my note that says provide all users in our database. All right, so the point was that I gave this as an example of a back-end logic, right? This is like a typical example, right, of a back-end of a BE logic, right? A back-end logic, right? A logic that returns all users in our database. And since it must return these users, right? It needs to return it in a standard what? Sorry, in a JSON standard, right? because we don't know from which software or from which language is what is it is communicating with our back-end logic, right? So the API comes in and what and serve as a messenger that does what that takes this request to our back-end logic, being what provide all users in our database, and then tender that request to that particular logic, and then what we process that request, and then what and in turn we send out what a collection or a list of what of all our what database users using what the JSON standard format. That was what that point, what I was trying to explain there in that point, right? The role of API in backend to do what to send information back and forward, right? To and fro, to and fro. Is that understood? Is that understood, Miss Julius or Mr. Julius? All right. Mr. Glottides. All right, so that has been understood. All right, so now we now know our role what as a backend engineer. We also know that we need APIs as well as backend engineers. But we need to build APIs as backend engineers. But basically, we are building what messengers to take requests and what and send out responses. Right? That is our duty. But then there's also another problem. The problem here is that how do we build APIs? How do we build APIs? Something I'm trying to indent out of this, but this man is not shifting. So how do we build APIs? How do we build APIs? Because that is our role. Our role is what is to build this messenger to take requests, process it, and do what send out response. Okay. Now, to build API, there are several means of doing this. There are several. There are a lot of them. Right? There are several methods of building API, but for the purpose of this track, for the purpose of this course, we are going to make use of a software of a framework. Excuse me. We are going to use a framework known as Fast API, right? Fast API. So Fast API, okay, is a framework that we use to do what? To build APIs. Are we following? That's basically what that framework does. It helps us do what? Build this messenger, right? It helps us build this messenger. It helps us build this messenger, Fast API. That is what we'll be using. There are other ones, right? There is Django REST framework, right? There is can't think of the other one now, but there is Django REST framework, there is Fast API. But for this track and for this course, we do what we'll focus on Fast API. And don't also worry, we will definitely cover Fast API, right? And we see how we can do start building this messenger, right? Start building this messenger. So, but then having that in mind again, there's always still a problem because the thing is that one thing about programming, when we solve one problem, another problem comes up, right? So that is basically how our life is. Right? We fix one bug, the one we fix now and then cause another problem. That's how it is. But it's over time you get used to it. In fact, once we see new bug, we just start smiling. Okay? So nothing to worry yourself about. So now the other problem is now Fast API, right, only understand a specific programming language. So it only understands understand Python programming language. So by now, you've already seen why this course is what is back in with what with Python. So it's because we are using Fast API, right, to build API, right, and then being that building of API is what is our role as back-end engineers. So that is how Python comes into the picture, right? Now, because what you intend to use to build this API only understands Python programming or only understand or process, right? I would say or process as well, or process Python programming language. So as such, that is why we intended, or that is why we term this course back end with what? With Python programming language. question before we proceed? Right, so the silence means no question. Right, so now before we now proceed, let's understand what is programming language for us to even arrive at what as Python programming language. So what exactly is programming language? Let's start from or what is programming? Let's start with what is programming, and then we move to what the programming language, and then we move to how we arrive at what at Python programming language. So what exactly is programming? What exactly is programming? All right, for those of us that are new to this word, right, programming is basically right a process of giving instruction. It's a process of giving instruction to a computer to perform a specific task, right? A specific task. All right. So that is what programming is, and I believe for most of us that are joining this call are either joining with our desktop computer or with our laptops, right? So a process where you communicate, you interact with that device that you are using is programming. Probably you tell that device, okay, I want you to update me or to notify me when it's 2 p.m. for your Python class. That is an instruction, and you can do what communicate with that device, and it do what it will execute that instruction, right? That is what programming is. So you pass the instruction to your computer, and your computer does what perform a specific task. Because at the end of it, or you don't just pass any random instruction. Of course, you are aiming for what for a specific task. That is what programming is, and we all understand. We all understand that these computers, right? That these computers or sorry for my typo errors up and down. So these computers only understand ones and zeros, one and zeros. So that is the only language that, please forgive every typo error. So that is the only language that our computer understand, one and zeros. So, but by now you're probably wondering, do I mean to tell you that we're writing ones and zeros? No, we won't be writing ones and zeros because the world has evolved. We've moved past one and zeros. So because of this evolution of the world, right, we now have several programming languages. So sorry, I'll duplicate this task. So sorry, this slide, so I can continue writing here, right? So please, I'll just delete this one out. So this is the previous slide. So I'll continue from here, okay? So I'll continue from here. So because of this evolution, right, we now have several programming types. Several programming types, right? Now we know that what that programming is what giving instruction in the language it understands, which is what one and zeros. But we won't be using one and zeros, right? Because what the programming world have done what have evolved, and then what we have a lot of programming languages. So we have several programming languages nowadays, but then we have two main categories of programming language. We have the low level, and we have the high level. Okay, we have the high level. Those are the two categories of programming. The two major categories, right? The major categories of programming language: the low level programming language and the high level programming languages, right? So for the low levels, these are basically for the low level, right? For the low level, these are basically machine language, right? Written without an interpreter. All right. So in those days, this was what people had to go through, right? They had to write machine language. What? So basically, they speak in direct language with the computer without what an interpreter. So basically, the instructions in those days were given with what we want and zeros, but we want and zeros. And truth be told, if if this concept has existed up to today, I'm not sure I will be doing programming, because imagine giving thousands of instructions in one and zeros. I assure you that if you miss 1 0, it it takes it takes a special grace to identify that zero. Imagine you have so many instructions in one and zero, and then you miss 1 0 in this instruction. This is just small instruction, right? Imagine you miss 1 0 or 1 1, right? Like one out of all these instructions, right? It will take you a lot of time, if not weeks, to identify where that zero is, or to identify where the problem is. But back in those days, this was what people used to go through, right? They use this to do what, to write their instructions, and they debug it. But then over time, people come into light and be like, okay, fine, that we can bring out another kind of programming language, right? Where individuals or programmers can communicate with the computer in plain English. And in turn, we do what? We bring in an interpreter that will interpret that plain English to what? To one and zeros. Now, that other part of that language is what we call high level programming language, right? So these ones are basically they are written in plain English and interpreted to machine language. Please forgive every typo error. Okay, so I'll correct this. I'll correlate this. All right, that is basically so that is basically right. So I'll do that soon. I'll do that soon. Right. So that is basically what the two major categories of programming language. So this is where Python falls in. So example of this language is Python. We have Python here. We have Java is here as well. We have Ruby. We have now all these new programming language that is coming up, right? Yeah, they all fall under programming and high level programming languages, right? Now the reason why is that these languages, we do what? We write in plain English. Basically, if you look at the code, you can read at least one thing from that code. Like you can see an English word in that code, right? Those are the languages that we consider as high level programming language. So this is where we are, Python. So not this other one, right? So having this in mind, then we can then come to a conclusion that Python is a high level programming language, right? It's a high level programming language used to communicate with the computer. Okay, programming, please. Forgive all typo error, please. All right. So that is basically what Python programming is, right? It's a high-level programming language. So you've seen how we've moved from back end all the way to Python. Question. 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 No question. All right. So the silence means no question. The silence means no question. All right. So there are so many features of Python. There are so many features of Python. Very wonderful and fantastic features of Python. So one thing that Python is known for. Okay, so someone hand is up. The Samuel. The Samuel hand is up. You can unmute and ask a question. The Samuel, you can unmute and ask your question.
Can you hear me, sir?
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you now.
I want to ask, apart from Python language, is it the only language that back end?
Oh, okay, fantastic question. Fantastic question. All right. So if I heard the question well, I think you asked, apart from Python, if if there are other languages that can be used for back-end development, right?
Yes, sir.
Exactly. Okay, fine. Okay, that's good. That's good. All right. There are other languages that can be used for back-end. Example of them is we have JavaScript. JavaScript, we have a framework that works with JavaScript for back-end development. It's known as Node, right? So, we didn't have to do Node because this is a beginner's class, okay? So we didn't have to look at other frameworks. Now, the reason is, truth be told, other frameworks are not that complicated if you are already in programming. But if you're coming new like this, it may look complicated, right? If you're coming in like coming into the world of programming new like this, it may look complicated. So if you actually Google, right, the most simplest programming language for beginners, you see that it's called Python top that chat. So that's one thing that Python is being known for. It's known for simplicity. So we have to go for Python because of that simplicity, and then do what? We use a framework within Python so we can do what? Have a feel of how back-end development works. Then over time, we can do what? Explore other frameworks. So there are, yes, so to answer your question, there are other frameworks for, there are other frameworks and languages for back-end development. And I just mentioned one, which is JavaScript that works with Node. We also have PHP, right? PHP that works with Laravel for back-end development. Is that understood?
Thank you very much.
All right. All right. Okay, so though you will get this slide, right? So not to fear, right? You will get the slide. Not to fear, you get the slide. Okay, so all right, so we can continue, right? We can continue from here. Any other question? Is there any other person that has question? All right. So silence means no other question. Okay, so there are the other features, right? Other fantastic features of Python programming language that we should know about is that one of them is that it's very. I'll put another very again. I'll put another very again. It is very, very, very simple and beginner friendly. So the language itself is very, very, very simple and beginner friendly, and it's also versatile. Versatile, right? It's also versatile. It means that I think among all the programming languages that have ever existed, Python has the highest versatility, right? It cuts across so many fields from back-end development to web to to AI to machine learning to data science to game dev to ethical to cybersecurity to I think almost all the fields. It cuts across almost all the fields. It had for each of those there are frameworks for them. For each of them there are frameworks for them, and all of them are understood. I understood or should I say understand Python programming language. So it's a very versatile language. It's a very versatile language. So and it's beginner friendly, like I said, and also very, very simple. All right, so one more thing that we could do is making sure that we have Python installed in our devices, right? Making sure that we have Python installed in our devices so we can do what we can start giving out these instructions so that what it could process it and execute them for us, right? So you can process and execute them for us. So I think that's basically where we will likely stop for this class because we don't intend to go deep. So we have our, like I said, we have our colleague out there that needs some technical orientation for us to be on the same page. So, but I believe that this class has been interesting and we've learned one or two from this class. So, but for additional thing, which I will still do it again, but for those of us that are here now, what I could say is we could install Python and then we could wrap it up for today's class, right? And then we'll come back again, we pick it up from there and continue. Is that okay? All right, so let's see how we can go ahead and install Python in our devices. Okay, so to install Python is pretty simple. It's very simple. Basically, you want to navigate. So installation of Python. So to have that installed, if you want to go to HTTPS, thing is www. Okay, HTTPS / I think www.python.org/downloads. So that is the official link that you have to go to get Python installed. So if you go there, it's a very simple interface. So just click on download and you have it downloaded. So that way, because right now you can't start writing instructions in Python because there is no interpreter. Remember that Python is high level, so it means that it requires what? It requires an interpreter. So the purpose of installing this Python is that so that we have this interpreter on our device, so that when we speak in the language of Python, it does what it interprets it to machine language. So if you just go ahead and just paste this link here, you should have python.org. So there it is. So this URL cannot change. This URL has been in existence. So you basically need to come here and click. So you click on this button, download Python 3.13.3. Right. So your version is not does not matter. Right. It does not really matter. Okay. So but from version 3, we are up to good. We are good to go. Rather, right. We are good to go. So click on this download, and it will download the installation file, and then I'll show you how. All right. So if once we click on that, then we should start that the downloading process. Right? You should start that downloading process. Yes, I want to talk about how we can walk around with our mobile phone, because I would say I would advise that that we could at any point in time. If you're coming into the programming field newly, always write code. Trust me. If you write code every day for the next 30 days, it stays with you, right? It stays with you. That's why when you see most developers, they say that they've written so many languages. It's because the trick is that if you can write in one language, you can write in all language. That's the truth. So I'll also show us how we can go out and work our way around installing for phone, and you can also write some code with our mobile devices. Okay, so if you click on this, right, this will carry other installation right there. So I already have mine installed, so I don't think I want to install it again. So I'll pause mine, but if you click on yours, that will install, and then you should have your installation file in your download section. So let me see if I can find mine, which I'm not too sure, but I'll find it somehow. So the download section, I think I should have Python somewhere. Okay, so I can't find it, but then it will look like this, right? It will look your normal application, your Windows application. So basically, what you want to do is you want to double click on on the application itself once it has finished installing. Okay, so there it is. So here it is. So I want to click on, if you want to double click on that, and then it will come up. It will show you your installation. It will show you installation menu like this. Okay, so I already have mine installed, so that's why you're having this interface. But if you don't have yours installed already, this is what you would see. Hold on, let me see if I can get a picture online of what you would see if you don't already have yours installed. So if I should type on Python installation screen, because there's one thing that you should check during this installation. So yeah, I'll go to image section, because I want to show you a visual of what you should see if you click on that installation. So this is what you would see. I don't know if you guys can see that clearly. Let me see if I can zoom out. This is basically what you would see. Trying to click on it so you can pop up. So this is what you would see. Let me see if I can zoom this out. it's not that clear, but I don't know if you guys can. Let me see if I can find a clearer one. Not that clear. Yeah, so I believe if you zoom, if you hold on. So I don't know if you guys can actually see this portion of where I'm putting my mouse. Can you guys see that? Please let me know in the comments. Can you guys see this portion that I'm seeing here? That I'm hovering on. Are you guys seeing that? Is it seeable? All right, so I believe that is seeable. All right, so now if you look at what we have down there, we have something like add Python to path. So basically, you want to check that. So once you double click on that application, this is what you would see. For those of us that don't have it installed already, this is what you would see. So you want to check that box that says add Python to path. There's a box there down there. If you could see it, that part says add Python to path. So you want to check on that box, and then you want to click on install now. So after checking on this box, you click on install now, right? Check the box, install now. Check the box, install now. So that's what you want to do, and then it will do what? Carry out that instruction for you completely, right? So one that has been done, or one that has finished, or one that has finished the installation, and you want to confirm that you have Python interpreter on your PC, what you want to do again is you want to go to command prompt. Okay, so let me see if I can jot that step down for us. So you visit this site, visit this man, and then what I want to do is let's see if we can ship this man up a little bit. So you visit this site. After that, you want to go ahead and double click on installation file. Double click installation file. Okay. So once the prompt comes up, you want to check the box that says add Python path. All right. So once you've done that, then you want to confirm installation. So once the installation has finished, you want add Python to path, and then finally you want to click on install now, right? So that's what you want to click on. After that installation, click on install now. So once that installation has finished, you want to go ahead and confirm installation. Confirm installation by going to command prompt. Go to command prompt cmd, right? And then type the command Python -- version. So you see the current version of Python if it's actually installed. But if you type this command and it doesn't show you a version, it means that there's something wrong with this step in your installation. So you have to go back again and double click on the installation file, right? And then check the box again, and then click on install now, and then come back again. So to go to CMD, you simply open up your. So this is command prompt, right? Its short form is CMD. So you can just search for it. Excuse me. Command prompt. So right, you click on it, and it will bring you here, right? So then inside here, that's where you want to type that command that I said Python -- version, right? So this should give you a version. So mine here is version 3.12.1, right? So your version number will differ from this, but I think this is the recent version. So if you're installing now, then you should have this version number 3.13.3, right? So it doesn't really matter if the version is different. It doesn't matter. It will still work. Okay, it will still work. Right. So question. So that is how you carry out the installation of Python. When we meet next, right, when we sort out these technical issues with our colleagues, then we will definitely we will start writing our Python languages, right? But for now, I believe that we are all good to go. So one more thing again that I want to add before I leave us to go or to attend the technical session, just in case we are one of them, we can resolve ourselves quickly. Is one more thing is after your installation of Python, you also want an editor that you intend to use in writing your instructions, right? So probably we'll just do that in our next class. So let us leave it there. Probably we'll just do that in our next class, right? Let's leave it that way, right? In our next class. Question. All right. So basically, this is what I also want to talk about. PyDroid 3. Yeah, that is the mobile application that we can use to write Python code on our device, on our mobile device. Unfortunately, PyDroid is only available to Android users, right? It's only available to Android users, and it's not. I'm not sure it's available for iOS. So, but if I can think of any application, I will let us know in the Discord channel, right? In our Discord channel. But for now, PC works, PyDroid works, right? For mobile phone, for Android devices, PyDroid works, right? For Android. Then for PC, you have, of course, for PC, that's what we just finished doing, right? You just come to this URL here, and then click on the download. And then after that has downloaded, you do what? You double click on that installation file. So the steps is here. You double click on the installation file, and then check the box that says add Python to path, and then click on install now. This should be now, not down, sorry. So, and then go to CMD. CMD here is a short form for command prompt. You can get this by simply going to your start menu, and then you search for CMD. So CMD is the same thing as command prompt. So if you search for CMD or command prompt, this man here will still come up, right? And then you open it up, and then you confirm this installation. That's how you work PC, right? That's how PC works, right? Question. All right, no question. Okay, so if possible, I can leave these 2 slides for us on in the channel. I'm not too sure, but if possible, right, I will leave it for us there. Just these 2 slides, right? Just these 2. This one that will jot down things for you. All right. So in absence of question, that's basically where we put a pause to this class, right? And we'll continue some other time. Okay. So someone hand is up for question. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So my question is, Fast API, I was told is built on Django. So, but must you have a knowledge of the Django to go into Fast API?
Okay. All right. So all right. That's a good one. Okay, a good question. Okay, but this okay. How do I put it? All right, so please, Fast API has nothing to do with Django. Django is a separate framework, also a Python framework. Okay, it's for Python as well, but it's a separate framework. Two of them they are not the same, right? They are different. They stay on their standalone frameworks, right? So Django is used for full stack, right? So someone who is doing both front end and back end, right? Full stack, that's Django, right? Because Django offers you room where you can write your front end, also offers you room where you can write your back end, right? But Fast API is specifically for back end, right? So you don't have any business with Django, please. Fast API is on its own, right? It's standalone, right? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, please. There are 2 different frameworks, please. All right. Any other question? Okay. So in the sense of other question, please just stay on the call while the KodeCamp manager, right, will come in and talk about the technical points. So at this point, we've come, the technical issues, right? So at this point, we've come to the end of this class and the end of this recording, right? So I'll end this recording here, and then he will come in and then talk about the technical issues, right? Okay.